I'm guessing you want to get your nostril piercing. That's why you clicked on this video, huh? Well, I'm going to tell you what you need to know before getting it done in Consultations by a Piercer, episode number 20. For those that are new to the channel, the Body Piercing and Tattooing channel, I hope you're enjoying the videos. I hope you're finding it helpful and all that stuff, but you might not know who I am. My name is DaVo. I'm a professional body piercer and have been since 1994. I own and I operate the Axiom Body Piercing Studio, located right here in Des Moines, Iowa, inside Skin Kitchen Tattoo. So today we're going to talk about probably the most popular piercing there is other than an earlobe piercing, the nostril piercing. It's just a piercing that just looks great on just about everybody. Now, average healing time on these is anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks, during which time I'm going to suggest that you clean them twice daily using a sterile saline spray. Me, personally, I like Neomed's Piercing Aftercare, mainly because it's sterile, it's convenient, it comes in a pressurized can, and it comes out in a fine mist. So it's less work. It's just easier to use because you just spray it directly on there. If you can't find that where you are on this planet, another option is to check out your local drugstore. Usually they're going to stock something similar. The thing you want to look for is that it is sterile, it is in a pressurized can, and when you turn it over on the back, it says sodium chloride, aka salt, in some form of water, probably purified water, and nothing else. No tree saps, no herbs and spices, none of that stuff, just plain salt water. The other thing I suggest is at the end of your shower, pull your hair and everything out of the way and just let the water kind of flow over the area for about 30 seconds. Now, what we're doing with both of these things is we're helping to remove and melt away that lymph discharge. You know, the crust on the crust of the piercing. The reason why we want you to remove those is when the jewelry shifts or moves or there's some type of contact, it can agitate the piercing and cause issues. So it's important to try to remove that on a regular basis. Now, you might come across situations where no matter what you do to it, no matter how much saline you use, how long you sit in the shower, that stuff just doesn't want to come off there. And there's an excessive amount of it. That might be a sign of another issue. That's why I would suggest instead of going and trying to find a tool to use, like Q-tip applicators or, I don't know, piece of bent wire that you found in the outlet or, a paper clip. Instead of doing that, go see your piercer. Have them take a look at it. Have them clean it, and maybe go over the cleaning process. Maybe you missed something, and because there might be something else going on. Because usually these piercings, nostrils, they might discharge a little bit off and on to a noticeable amount the first week or so, but usually after that, you're not going to see a lot of discharge. And the other thing is that snot, it does collect on the inside. So the saline helps to remove that. But if you have kind of you're blowing your nose a lot, we'll just leave it at that. You may need a little extra help cleaning that off. Now let's go into things you don't do. You don't cross-contaminate. Cross-contamination prevention. Common sense stuff. Wash your hands before you handle it. The only time you really need to have any contact with it is when you're spraying it, or that's about it. The rest of the time, leave it alone. No oral contact or exchanging of bodily fluids on, near, or around the piercing. Keep your environment clean. Clothing, bedding, towels, pillowcases, anything that comes in contact with the piercing, sunglasses, glasses, etc., should be cleaned on a regular basis. Do not submerge piercing in bodies of water you cannot control the quality of, which is pretty much everything but your own clean bathtub. I know a lot of people will say, well, pool water. No, there is not a standing body of water that doesn't have microorganisms in it that could get into an open wound and cause an infection. I know your mom told you when you had your knees were all cut up and scabbed over, swimming is going to make it better. I know it stings, honey, but go in anyway. It doesn't. And you should never really swim with an open wound, especially in a public pool. Keep pets away from it. Don't let them sleep in the bed with you, especially them small animals like to sleep up by your face and steal your breath while you're sleeping. It's my breath. Stop stealing it. Avoid contact with unclean objects. There's not really a lot of culprits on this one other than anything that goes over your glass or over your eyes. Glasses, goggles, stuff like that. I guess if you wore like veils, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, make sure that anything that comes in contact with the area is cleaned on a regular basis. Speaking about things coming in contact with the area, no cosmetics, no powder-based makeups, no foundation, none of that stuff around the piercing until it heals. Those can all cause issues. They work their way into the piercing, and a worst-case scenario could cause a glandular cyst, which is painful, ugly, and hard to get rid of, and requires usually medical treatment. If you use any type of cleanser on your face that tingles when you apply it or is gritty, keep it away from the piercing until it heals. Now the second part of do not. Trauma, pressure, and abuse. Do not sleep on the piercing. Don't do it. Don't sleep on it. I don't care how good it feels. Don't sleep on it until it's completely healed. And even then, you might find sleeping on it the next morning it's sore. Don't sleep on it. Don't spin it. Don't rotate it. Don't move it. It ain't a fidget center. Leave it alone. You have the rest of your life to play with it once it is healed. Jewelry. With this piercing, my number one suggestion is threadless, labret, or labret, depending on who you want to talk to, stud at the beginning. You could use a threaded version of that. That would work fine, but they're a little bit more of a pain, and you have to constantly check the balls to make sure they don't come unscrewed. The other option would be either a nostril screw or an L-bend. The thing with the nostrils and L-bends, they're not very secure. They tend to have a lower profile, so they have that advantage. They're a little easier to change in some cases. But for security and just ease and not having to deal with crap, labret studs, I'm telling you. Night and day. Night and day, kids. Now, you should downsize, especially with the labret studs, in roughly about 4 to 6 weeks. We always pierce with something a little bit too large to allow for swelling, inflammation, that old thing. And after that, there's really not a reason to have a big, long post in there. They can cause additional movement, which can lead to problems. The other problem with it is it tends to kind of bang into your septum sometimes, and it don't feel good to have that disc banging against the inside of your nose. Lastly, on jewelry is it should not, I repeat, should not be done with a ring. For years, I pierced with rings. I had probably, 20, 30, 40, maybe 100,000 people heal out with rings. Yes, they did that, but yes, there was a lot more issues, especially with bumps and etc. And we used to pierce, the fashion was a larger ring. Now everybody wants a really tiny ring. Putting a little tiny ring in there, you're just asking for giant, ugly bumps. Now, if you do plan on wearing a ring in the future, or you want to, you do need to discuss that with your piercer during the consultation and when they are marking it and deciding out what the placement of the piercing is going to be. You got to keep in mind, the ring, the distance between where the piercing's at and the bottom of your nose can't be shrunk in any way, shape, or form, and rings are perfect circles. So if it's this far off the bottom of your nostril, it's going to be a ring this big. So do talk to them about that at the right time. It's easier to remark something than it is to re-pierce it. Now let's talk a little bit about the experience itself, pain, etc. Pain, not usually a very painful piercing. Worst case scenario, most people say this is between a 2 and a 4. It's usually a little bit of pressure. It'll make your eyes water in most cases. Not over pain, but just basically anything that has to do with the sinuses. Just like if you, if you get tapped in the nose just right, your eyes start watering, kind of the same thing, or you pull out a nose hair. Ow, that hurts. But yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Now, you usually will have a little bit of slight throbbing or aching for about, a couple minutes in most cases. Maybe a little bit of bleeding, depending on who did it, how they did it, and what type of jewelry you have in there. Anatomy. Oh, I'm losing my mind. Anatomy. I'm losing my mind. Most nostrils can be pierced. I have not met I really haven't met a nostril I couldn't pierce yet. But I'm sure there are cases if you have some type of pre-existing medical condition or skin issue or what have you, where it may not be possible. The bottom line is, if you have a nostril, we can probably pierce it. The traditional placement is right on that fold where the nostril kind of flares out, that flare of the nostril kind of meets, and there's kind of a crease right there. However, if you're going to go with rings or stacked or what have you, sometimes, or more commonly, they're pierced below that. Some people don't even have that crease. They just have the straight nose, no crease, no flaring nostrils, unlike mine, which are huge. Already talked about this, but if you're planning on putting a ring in there, talk to them about it, because you're going to probably put it lower if they know in advance. Also discuss at time of placement, when you're picking the placement and marking, if you have any plans for future groupings on your nose. Maybe you want to get them a stack set, or maybe you want to do high nostrils, or maybe you want to match both sides. It's a good idea to talk about these things so you can make room for them and kind of plan them out, instead of randomly coming back in a year and a half and going, I want this one to perfectly match this one, and I want one above this, and there's just maybe not enough room, or maybe the placement is a little off. It's much easier to do it from the start. Things you should consider. First off, if you work somewhere or you're involved in any type of sporting activity or what have you, where you have to wear safety equipment and there's pressure on your nose, this may not be the piercing for you. I would advise against it until you're done doing it. The other thing is if there's a dress code involved. That's not going to change because you're the cool person who can wear it. Most of the cases, it's beyond the control of the coach. It's beyond the control of the ref. It's beyond control of anybody there. It's just prohibited. And you need to check on this beforehand. Don't show up and just expect them to just let it be. Same goes for work. Talk to your boss, talk to your coach, talk to that person that's involved. The guy with the whistle or gal with the whistle, or, what have you. Another thing to consider is if you wear glasses, make sure that you wear them to the appointment. Try them on after it's marked to make sure there's not contact with that piercing, especially if you're doing multiple piercings, where we tend to move out of kind of the more traditional dead center and we're all over the place. Next thing, are you traveling? Are you going out of town on business? Are you going on vacation? The reason why this is important is because you're going to be in an environment where you have absolutely no control over how clean it is. Basically, it's whoever the hotel or wherever you're staying has decided is good enough to do the job. If you watched Hotel Nightmares, that isn't really always the great case. It's not always as clean as you would hope it would be. The other thing is most people when they're on trips, they love to swim. And as I mentioned earlier, I don't suggest swimming while the piercing's healing. I especially don't when you're outside of your normal home base, partly because you are exposing yourself to additional pathogens that you may not have had any contact with and thus no immunity towards. So it could be a much worse infection than you would see if you just swam in the pool at your neighbor's house. You're going to see more in an area that's further from you. And I always end with sleeping and isolate. Isolate and don't sleep on it. Make sure you're sleeping on your other side or your back. I have some clients get away with kind of putting the pillow just a little bit off to the side so it's out of the way and they're off the bed. I don't know how well or effective that is. I guess it's how you train yourself to sleep. But the reality is your best option is just don't sleep on that side or pierce the side you normally don't sleep on. I'm going to get into matching nostril piercings, etc. later. But understand, when you do your whole both sides of your nostril, there's really only one way you can sleep without causing issues, and that's flat on your back like a vampire. It's just the way it is. There's not really any magic way of magic pillow that's going to keep that from agitating and causing problems. Well, that's all I have to say on that subject today. Till next time, here's hoping all your piercings heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I hope to see if your body piercing needs in the future. Check out this other consultation thing I did. It's in the box.